Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about what not to say, what to say to avoid the violation slap. Now we are sharing this content with you because we've been getting a lot of emails and calls and messages and all the rest of it from all of our coaching clients and EXP family about, frankly, they don't want to get in trouble with their MLS. They don't want to break any of the rules. So what Julie put together is a relatively brief, to-the-point presentation today, a podcast, so that you guys can at least have the basics understood as far as what to do, what not to do, if you don't, of course, want to have a violation slap or, some kind of other way that they're going to be calling the newest way to extract money from realtors is really at the end of the day.
Right?
I mean, well, it's because that, what are we hearing? Some of the violations are going to cost anywhere from, what's the range you've heard?
$500 to $5,000 per incident.
Yep. And I heard also some of these MLSs are going to try to have like a 3 strikes and you're out type policy where they can, ban you from having MLS access. Which is really kind of fascinating too, because that doesn't mean anything really happens to your license. It just means that you're no longer a member of the MLS.
It causes an inconvenience for you.
Well, it sure does. But if the MLSs all of a sudden start to go, I think a little bit high on their own supply.
Draconian, perhaps?
Exactly. They start really liking this whole idea that they can, enforce and charge fees. It won't take long for there to be an alternative to, some of these MLSs that I think probably take it too far. But in the interim, we have these new rules that we're going to have to all be acting under the accord of. And so Julie's going to give you some guidelines so that you don't end up with a violation slap. And ultimately, this is great material if you're a broker, you're an agent, you're a team leader, or you just want to create social media content. This is all good stuff to know to really help get the market moving forward and help get the industry moving forward and stop worrying about the injustices of it all, which is really where people are stuck. The reality is the reality. We all have to follow these new rules and guidelines. Now, these notes are available, of course, to our daily newsletter subscribers, and the notes are free. And these are very, as Julie always does a great job, detailed notes. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is where we publish all of our notes. We wish we could still publish all of our notes on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and all the rest of it, but they prevent us from doing so because our notes are so lengthy. So you have to go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. The newsletter is free. It takes you 2 seconds to subscribe. All you got to do is drop your email into the box, and then you are good to go. That should be your homework that all of you should make a priority the second you're done listening to today's show.
That's right. So again, today's topic, 5 key points on staying compliant with your lovely new MLS rules. Don't get slapped with a violation and or a fee. Words matter, and you are operating in a heightened regulatory environment where MLSs are watching very closely for violations and agents to be made an example of. That's not just the MLSs, but I think agent-to-agent scrutiny is at a heightened area right now.
Well, that's going to be what causes the most, I think, fear and consternation and agony, really, for a lot of agents and MLSs and brokers and the rest of it, is essentially how we all work through this, new guise of enforcement, That's what's going to be weird. So really, again, just make sure you're not, and a lot of these things should be obvious when you realize that a lot of the, suggestions Julie has for all of you, they really are going to basically be in alignment with, hey, you know what? Stay out of the gray area. Don't do anything sketch. Don't try to work around what obviously should be the the rules of the road.
That's exactly right. And you'll notice that we're taking a pretty conservative approach to that. This is based on the NAR FAQs, the Q&As, a lot of review of the actual legalese, which I think is part of the problem, is how some of this is written. But you'll notice that we're taking a pretty conservative approach because you are all under scrutiny. And of course, our podcast is designed to educate you, motivate you, and get you into action. So keep that in mind. And a quick disclaimer, we are not attorneys. We are not your broker. Check with your broker and state associations and MLSs for very specific attorney-vetted compliance issues. How about that for a disclosure? Okay, so point number 1, again, words matter, both spoken in your voicemail, in your email, on your websites, and especially in the MLS. Use the term fee instead of compensation or commission. Agents should shift their language to use the word fee rather than commission or compensation when discussing payment. This change helps avoid the negative connotations associated with these terms due to recent litigation. Say you're an attorney searching the MLS for those words. Keep yourself out of trouble. Referring to it as a fee also opens up various possibilities for sellers to assist buyers, such as offering credits for repairs or helping with interest rate buydowns. Stop saying compensation and commission. Just put it all together into the word fee.
And remember, Julie and I did research all of this for you. So if you want to, in your MLS listing agents, on the public-facing comments, all right? So on the public-facing portion of your MLS, you are free to put, seller will consider all concessions. Seller will consider all concessions. That could be the roof repair. That could be the home warranty. That could be the pool table. And that could, of course, include buyer agent commissions. We've talked about this at length on previous podcasts. So make sure you go back and listen to all of our past podcasts on this very topic, because we're telling you exactly how to ask for as a buyer agent, and when your buyer has signed an exclusive contract with you where the buyer is now responsible for paying your buyer agent commission, we tell you exactly what to say and how to say it in terms of asking it for in the form of a concession from the seller. So make sure you, listing agents, make sure you put in the MLS, seller will consider all concessions.
Now, there's a key word there that they can't skip. Consider.
Right.
Okay? Why is that important? Well, as always, with all negotiations, right? If somebody comes in a low ball, whether real or perceived, they come in not over list, not at list, they're coming in less. Maybe they want buyer closing costs and they want a home warranty and they want some repairs and this, that, and the other, and your fee. Well, the way you negotiate that, the way you counter that is going to be different than somebody who comes in at list price and only asks for the buyer agent fee and everything else is pretty clean. Maybe that offer even writes as is. So that's why you say consider. Consider implies bring us your best shot and expect to be countered or rejected if it's not good enough, just like all other negotiations.
And just for the record, and this is unofficial, and this is just our opinion, but we don't really think at the end of the day you're going to see that marketable of a difference in how buyers agents are paid. We do think for the most part it will be continued to be paid as a concession to the buyer in the contract. You could be argued it's always been that way. What this litigation has done, and I think over time, we're going to see the way the market works all this out is actually better for the industry, but it's just essentially made everyone operate on a level playing field. Buyers agents are now going to have presentations. They're now going to have to be able to show their value. You guys sick of hearing that yet? We are, right? Buyers agents are going to have to, disclose how they're getting paid. Everybody's going to, be operating off the same script. So, Julie, your next point. Point number 2 is promote transparent buyer representation agreements.
That's right. Agents should clearly communicate the importance of signing a buyer representation agreement before showing properties. Use your ethical real estate professional buyer presentation. We'll talk about that more in a second, for example. And perhaps the new EXP buyer broker representation agreement form, which offers a clear model for this. It uses the term broker fee. Remember, our previous point is to change your language to fee. The EXP agreement, which I believe is virtually universally acceptable, it uses the term broker fee throughout the document and specifying how the fee will be paid rather than compensated. This agreement also allows for the broker fee to be negotiated with the seller either through a credit to the buyer at closing or through a direct payment to the broker. This approach will keep you compliant. So that's pretty clear, I think.
Right. And again, if for some reason you have a seller that is not willing through a concession towards the buyer to pay the buyer agent fee, we have again provided all this information with you for you, and we're going to continue to do so, especially in ethical real estate professional designation. We're showing you how to essentially have that paid for or covered in their financing. So that means that your buyer agent fee, your buyer agent commission, in essence, will be covered either directly by the seller as a concession towards the buyer, or it's going to be covered in the buyer's financing. And we again are showing you how to do that in Ethical Real Estate Professional, the designation program that we have coming out now. There are hundreds and hundreds of you that are on the wait list for that new program. Make sure if you've not yet done so, you are on that list. What we have done with this Ethical Real Estate Professional designation program is we've created a business in a box for buyer agents, and it's going to create a new paradigm in the real estate industry because it really is a one-stop, I think, all-encompassing program to make it so that buyer agents will feel comfortable and confident asking for exclusives to be signed. There's a very detailed presentation which is explaining all your unique selling propositions. There are all of our scripts, buyer pre-qualification forms. This is an exhaustive product, and we're also creating this. You're going to have paper, essentially a folder that you can give to buyers, and a literal, here it goes, Mr. Buyer. Here's the reason why you want to work exclusively with me. And we're also creating digital versions of all that as well. So this is a very comprehensive program. We are doing our best to get this out, frankly, this week, but I don't think it's going to happen. It's probably going to end up being another couple of weeks because we're upgrading some of the presentation material and we're also upgrading some websites. So I'll tell you guys what we're going to do. I had this idea last week, so it was too good for us not to do it. We're going to make it so that you guys all have ethical real estate professional standalone websites. That's going to be an option for you to have your own website. That way you can lead capture. You can obviously then present your actual buyer agent presentation on the website. It'll be done for you. So we're in the midst of creating all that. It might mean that we're going to have to release the program in another month versus doing it now, but I think that's okay because you guys will have a better result. If you want to be on the list to be considered to be part of the ethical real estate professional designation, we're opening the door, and like I said, probably about maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, and just text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, B-U-Y-E-R to 47372. Text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R to 47372. And what's going to happen is the day we decide to release the program, probably the day before, we're going to send out a text, and the first 100 agents that basically respond are going to be the first. Your guys are going to be essentially the founding members of the new designation, ethical real estate professional. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R to 47372. If you're a broker, if you're a team, if you're an independent agent and you're worried about what the heck you're going to do given all these new rules, and especially as we're all sort of co-discovering the complexity of all this, well, this is going to be your turnkey solution that's going to solve those problems for you. And this is not a static program. As always, we're going to update things along the way and make the designation better and better. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Julie, point number 3 is discuss broker fees, not commission sharing in conversations.
Yes, so this is another little entanglement conversationally. And the phrase commission sharing can be triggering and, play into the news and all that kind of stuff. Plus, we want to call it what it is. They're broker fees. While commission sharing cannot be advertised in the MLS, agents can discuss broker fees with their clients outside the MLS platform. The EXP agreement, for example, I go back to that because that's already been vetted and a lot of agents are using it. It includes language that allows the broker to negotiate with the seller for the broker fee, either directly or through a credit to the buyer, and it ensures all parties know how the fees will be handled. It's very specific. It promotes transparency, and again, by doing so, you'll be compliant. So that's in writing and it's in conversation. Then point number 4 gets to when you are drafting purchase contracts. Again, we're talking about words that matter. Using the phrase terms and conditions is better than using the word concessions. Agents should use the wording terms and conditions when drafting purchase contracts instead of concessions. Just train yourself to say terms and conditions. You're used to saying that about everything else, and it is a term and condition. If your state or brokerage purchase contract has a field for concessions, attorneys are advising to leave that field blank. Instead, agents should place any additional terms the seller wants in other terms or conditions field or addendum. Now, that's a little bit legal for me and for our purposes on the podcast, so refer back to what your broker is coaching you on. But the general coaching on this is always to say terms and conditions.
But right there, that's going to be a little black hole of agony for some people because it's so, bizarre. That's the reason. I mean, just the very fact that there's a form, an area in the MLS that they're supposed to be avoiding because some attorney said that it might be bad
and
news.
Yet it's named.
And yet it's named, and yet it's actually in the thing. EXP Realty specifically said, and they're the ones that are ahead of the curve on all of this, they're the ones that specifically said put into the buyer or into the consumer-facing comment section of the MLS, seller will consider all concessions. That's the place to put it. Don't hide it. I think that's one of the things they're going to be looking for is steering. Mm-hmm. So if, for example, you're trying to put little secret languages and all this other Mickey Mouse that's going to happen on the agent-to-agent facing comments or just, some off MLS site, things like that, that's what they're looking for. So if you put it on the consumer-facing section where it says seller will consider all concessions, that's really going to be, I think it's going to open the conversation up that when you call the seller and asking what the concessions will be that the seller's considering. Those are the types of conversations. That's the type of professionalism that's going to be required so you can level up.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of the confusion is, and I've talked to our coaches and our coaching clients about this, many agents, and we were like this, we sold in Franklin County and Delaware County. A lot of times they're dealing with 2 or 3 different MLSs that all have different rules and different fields. That's part of this confusion, and I think that that'll eventually be compressed into some universal language. Meanwhile, we have to have podcasts like this.
Well, I don't want these guys, our listeners, or our coaching clients, and certainly our EXP family, I don't want them to be the canaries in the coal mine.
Me neither. That's why we're going conservative.
Right. We don't want you guys to essentially be the ones that are, the boundaries, the legal stuff is being tested on. Or you did something thinking that you were clever, and all of a sudden you're now in the crosshairs of some, lawsuit or something like that, or some fine from your MLS. That's what we're hoping you avoid, because really, guys, that's just wasting time at this point. The new rules are the new rules. Just abide by the new rules. Get back in alignment with your highest and truest purpose, which is being of service to other people. We're talking about buyer agency again, so obviously you're talking about your buyers. But really, at the end of the day, that is what your job is to help a buyer find a home and negotiate the contract and go through the entire process. So focus forward on that. Stop worrying about, again, the injustice of all this. Julie and I are going to give you and continue to give you, I think, the state-of-the-art information on all these types of things. Obviously, refer to your broker and your office manager and your attorney and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, you are still a real estate practitioner. Your job is to help a buyer find a house. So think about that. And then if you find buyers that are not willing to commit to you exclusively, after you've, you need to seriously consider why. What is it that's making you uncompetitive? Why aren't they willing to work with you exclusively? Probably because you just have failed to explain what your value proposition is. Probably because they have bought and sold before and they've never been asked to sign this something that's an exclusive. Well, you need to really sidestep your normal way of operating and realize that you need to go back to step one and learn how to present, and with the idea that the buyer is going to sign the exclusive contract. The same thing when you are learning how to be a listing agent, or hopefully if you have never learned how to be a listing agent, you can now learn again if you become a premier coaching client or learn correctly the first time. But really, it's showing respect to the buyer if you have a formalized presentation. It's showing respect to the process if you have a formalized presentation. They're not going to sign with you exclusively unless you're presenting yourself as a professional. That's what the industry, especially on the buyer side, has been lacking for, decades.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just to put some color on this, I was thinking exactly what you just said when I was sitting in the orthodontist appointment with our kid last week, right? And so they had their proposal. They did all the x-rays. They did all the things, right? So they did a little bit of homework. That was their pre-qualifying, their gathering of their information. Then they did some analysis, kind of like a CMA, for example, in real estate. And they sat us down and had a consultation. They explained what 2 or 3 different options were. They showed us a video, okay? They showed us a second video of the second option. Then they went through their contract. Then they asked for my signature. They asked for a credit card number and sent us on our way. Now, that was a very specific pattern of pre-qualifying, doing the research, pre-qualifying, presenting. You really can't negotiate, I don't think, and then closing. And I had the option to say, well, maybe we ought to get a second opinion, or maybe I'm not comfortable signing that. But because they did a great job presenting, I was comfortable. I felt like they had, done their research and had an actual plan. That's what professionals do, and that was just an orthodontist.
Well, and then follow up. So they called you back, and they said they have they have essentially mind melded with the other professionals, and now they have some sort of formalized presentation that they want to actually present to you.
Yes, and they have, to your point, they have been good communicating. They put me on WhatsApp, they do text me, and they voicemail and email me. They do all 4 things at the same time. The email says we left you a voicemail message. The WhatsApp, has a little detail on what they wanted me to do. They had a call to action, call the office because we need to schedule immediately. But that's back to our original point. If you want to be treated and paid as a professional, you have to present as such, or don't expect the signature back.
Yeah, and some of you guys are thinking that the market's going to go to the bottom end. We're seeing paid per showing and all the other types of menu for services things. You all don't have the advantage of having been in this business for 3 decades like Julie and I, but let me tell you, all those ideas have been around forever. None of these ideas are new. The idea that there's going to be somebody that's willing to, I'll work with a buyer for $1,000, or, I'll show a house for $50 per showing. All these things, none of these are new ideas. They all fail. They fail because the incentive and structures aren't aligned. And we can talk more about that in a different podcast. But at the end of the day, buyers want representation and sellers want representation. Buyers want somebody that's going to exclusively represent them through the entire process. But now, because they're going to be technically obligated to compensate that buyer's agent directly, they're going to become very picky about the buyer agent that they work with. You guys get that? They're going to start being very selective because before, the way the system worked, the commission, the buyer agent commission, was in essence an entitlement to the transaction. Well, and so the buyers, they weren't having to essentially directly pay it, arguably, right? And the buyer's agents never actually had to compete for that buyer because, there was no expense on behalf of the buyer. Now that's all changed. So you guys see the difference? Buyer's agents who are not learning how to compete to earn that exclusive buyer agency contract signature, they're the ones that are going to be suffering in this market. Everybody else, especially listing agents, they're loving this change.
That is true. That is absolutely true. Okay, our final point today is on the seller side. Handle seller objections with the focus on the seller's net. When a seller objects to paying a buyer broker's fee, agents can overcome this objection by emphasizing the goal of achieving the highest possible net price for the property. You can start by asking the seller if their primary objective is to get the highest net price. Of course, you know what the answer is to that. Then explain that the ultimate decision on how fees are handled can be made after reviewing offers. Not all offers are the same. For example, if an offer that asks the seller to pay the buyer's broker fee nets a higher amount than the other offer, the seller is likely to choose the one that results in a better net outcome. This approach focuses the conversation on the seller's financial goals and ensures they remain open to all possibilities. To me, that's a very simple conversation, and it's accurate, it's true. We look at all the different offers. You guys are in an advantage that you still have many offers to look at in most cases. Should the market go more towards the buyer side, that conversation might be a little bit different.
Okay, so what did she just say? If the buyer's agent, and we're seeing this in the MLS in a lot of markets, right? We're seeing that it's becoming a balanced market. In some markets, it's actually tipping towards being a buyer's market. Mm-hmm. That means there's going to be more listing, or there's going to be an equal number of buyers as there are homes for sale, and then there actually might be more homes for sale than there are buyers. And that point, that you're going to see a sellers making a lot more concessions in the form of lowering the prices, including things, doing all kinds of things to try to basically win that buyer.
Yeah, giving more to the buyer. That's the definition of the buyer's market. The control goes towards the buyer side.
And we saw during the housing crash, and you might remember this as well, you'll start seeing the essentially the compensation for the buyer's agent to actually increase. Builders have been notorious for doing this, where they'll just raise the commission by sometimes 6-7% just towards the buyer agent just to get a contract. So, guys, the realities of this market are going to be ultimately dependent on really the market fluctuations. This is a relatively free market, and as such, buyers are going to determine what they want. Sellers are going to determine what they want. There's going to be guidelines and rules that we're all going to have to act within, and that's fine. We can do it, right? It's not that big of a challenge. Just open your mind to the fact that the days of essentially buyers being Julie's old saying, right? Sellers are mental labor and buyers are physical labor. Sellers, you have to have a scripted approach. You have to have a professional approach. You have to have essentially more of a drill down business system. Whereas working with buyers, there's a lot of social, right? Because all the things I've just talked about a second ago. Now we're looking at both things being equal, but guess what? Buyers are still going to be now they're mental labor and they're going to be physical labor because you have to go out there on your nights and weekends, show homes. If you want the ultimate relief valve for all of this, I'll tell you what it is. Become a listing agent. There's just no two ways about that. And that's something that we've specialized in. And it's really where our focus has always been, because when Julie and I sold real estate, we knew that's where we created leverage. Would you rather think about this. Would you rather have 20 buyers or would you rather have 10 sellers? Well, I'll even make it even better. Would you rather have 20 buyers or would you rather have 5 sellers? And all these sellers are priced right. They're all, great condition, location. These are pretty much going to be guaranteed sales. Or would you rather have all those buyers? Every single one of you are going to take the sellers, aren't you? Well, become a listing agent. So if you've been on the fence about learning how to be a listing agent, now is your time to move forward with that. And we've made it easy for you. You can join Premier Coaching for free. Just text the word Premier to 47372. Text the word Premier to 47372. Or just go to premiercoaching.com and join. And you do get immediate 30-day access, including a daily semi-private coaching call with a Harris certified coach. So text the word Premier to 47372. Anything else you'd like to say to these guys before we wrap for today?
Well, get into action. Don't live in fear. We're all going through this together, and that's why we are supplementing what you're hearing, reading, and seeing with these podcasts. So get into action. And if you have questions, you can find us. You also know how to get the notes, and we'll see you on tomorrow's show.
Thank you for keeping us the number one listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals. And please do remember to always give us a 5-star review over on iTunes and include a comment as what you specifically liked about the podcast. And when you do, message me over on Instagram that you did that, and let Julie and I say thank you by maybe sending you an autographed book or something like that. So remember to give us a 5-star review over on iTunes and a comment why specifically you love the podcast, and then let me know over on Instagram so Julie and I can formally say thank you back. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.